welcome you to Sisters in Crime. Sisters in Crime is a national organization founded in 1986 by Sarah Paretsky to promote the professional development and advancement and equality of women crime writers in the industry. Our Orange County chapter, most chapters, I think, have monthly meetings and speakers that, as a member of the national organization, you can attend. Our Orange County chapter meets monthly on the fourth Sunday of the month and is open to all. We also hold special workshops, master classes, free to our members, both sisters and misters, and we do have men as members. And you can read about this on our website, ocsistersincrime.org. You can also read about the perks for members at National's website, sistersincrime.org. Someday, hopefully not too far in the future, we will meet in person, but for now we have Zoom. So please mute your computers. And I already told you about the video. Turn it off if you want to hide out or if you are hiding out. And today we're just so happy to present a conversation with literary agents. I will introduce each briefly, and you can read their extended bios on their websites or on our website, ocsistersincrime.org. We have Lori Galvin with us. She was a book editor before joining Avitas Creative Management as agent in 2015. Her book deals include Cambria Brockman's debut thriller, Tell Me Everything, published by Valentine 2019, and Netflix has optioned the film rights. Holly Watts, CWA Steel Dagger Award-winning To the Lions, published by Dutton, and Sister in Crime member Wanda M. Morris's debut, All Her Little Secrets, published by William Morrow in 2021. Paula Munier is a literary agent and USA Today bestselling author whose roots in the mystery community, writing community run deep. As senior literary agent and director of storytelling for Talcott Not Literary, she specializes in crime fiction, representing many great crime writers. Michelle Richter joined Fuse Literary in 2014 from St. Martin's Press, where she worked on a variety of fiction and nonfiction. Michelle's clients have won or been shortlisted for such awards as the Edgar, Mary Higgins Clark, Strand Critics, Anthony, Agatha, Lefty, on and on. And she's a member of Sisters in Crime, yay. So welcome each of you. And perhaps we can begin by each of you talking about how you found your way to agenting. Do you want to go first, Michelle?
Sure. I had been at St. Martin's Press for 8 years and was just starting to try and figure out what I wanted to do next. And so I reached out to some wonderful agents that I'd met at some conferences, Gordon Warnock and Laurie McLean. And I really liked the kind of work they were doing with their agency, and they seemed like nice people. So I just had a chat with Gordon about agenting life. And then 2 weeks later, he came back to me and said that he and the other partners thought I would be a great fit for their agency and asked if I wanted to join. And I've been there ever since.
Excellent. Lori?
Yeah, I mean, sort of a similar situation. I had been at Houghton Mifflin for a number of years, I guess about 10 years. And then I was with America's Test Kitchen, editing cookbooks. And I just wanted to get back to working with a variety of authors and genres, and contacted somebody I had worked with at Houghton Mifflin who had made the change from editing to agenting. And I don't know, I did a lot of reaching out and ended up joining Avitas, which happened to have a Boston office. I mean, that's the great thing about agenting. You don't have to like live exactly where, you know, the agency is headquartered. And it just sort of like ticked all my boxes. So very happy to have made the switch.
Excellent. Paula?
I was in acquisitions for many years for a number of different companies. And the last gig I had, I was running acquisitions for Adams Media, which is now part of Simon & Schuster. And I reached that, glorious middle age And when a lot of middle-aged acquisitions editors get laid off, and I got laid off, we went through several, like 5 CEOs in 5 years, and it was kind of a mess. And so I didn't know what to do next. And I'd always been a writer. I started off as a reporter. So I thought, well, I'll just go back to writing. And apparently I wrote a very sad blog about my dying dog and my, the winter and not having a real job anymore. And my agent, Gina Panettiere of Talcott Notch Literary, whom I'd known for years. She's my agent. I'd also done a lot of deals with her as an acquisitions editor. She called me, she says, oh my God, you need something to do. Why don't you join our agency? And so I had never thought of myself as a salesperson. Because I did that as a writer and an editor, I did a lot of acquiring and developing and writing books, but I just didn't think of myself as a salesperson. She goes, oh, it's just like pitching pub boards. You'll be great. Send me a headshot and a bio. And because I always do what my agent tells me to do, I sent her a headshot and a bio. And a week later, I had 1,000 queries in my inbox. So I thought, okay, I'm an agent now. and it's the best job I ever had. So there you go.
Excellent. And I should tell everybody, if you have questions for our agents, put them in the chat and I'll be looking at the chat and we'll ask them. So each of you talk about what you represent too. Do you only represent crime fiction? Do you represent other genres? And how did you come to choose the list that you have? We could go backwards, start with you, Paula.
Okay, well, I did, as an acquisitions editor, I'd done some fiction, but I'd also done a lot of nonfiction. So I just assumed I would be representing a lot of nonfiction. But as it turned out, when I started 9 years ago, people were asking for series, particularly crime series. And I'd been long associated with Sisters in Crime, long associated with Mystery Writers of America, very active with the New England Crime Bake. And so I had a lot of friends who were crime writers. And so I ended up signing a lot of my friends who wrote crime and, getting them series. And it was great. So I ended up doing a lot of crime, which I love as a writer and as a reader. I love crime fiction. I also do women's fiction. I do nonfiction. I do some middle grade, some crossover YA.
Michelle?
I mostly do crime fiction, which is my true love. It's what I always love to read. And I do some women's fiction and select YA. And yeah, I acquired a lot of nonfiction too, but fiction's really my true love. And so basically I agent what I like to read.
Interesting. Lori?
Yeah, I would say the same thing. As Michelle just said, when I started out, cookbooks were extremely familiar to me. I had worked on so many, so I started out with that and did some other illustrated nonfiction books. And I happened to get, just by happenstance, a thriller and loved it so much, signed the person right away, and just kind of didn't look back. I mean, I still do some nonfiction, especially memoir, but I love crime fiction. I love suspense, and I also do other types. I do literary fiction, historical fiction, but yeah, it's what I read for fun, and it just feels like, it doesn't feel like work when I'm working on crime fiction. So that's a pretty nice feeling.
So when something comes in, a query or a manuscript, do you go with how you feel about it? Is that 100% of why you will take something on? Or do you see a project coming in that you think would be very marketable and you like it well enough? You might not love it, but you think, for the market today, it's perfect. Like, how do you decide?
Shall I start?
Yeah.
I think it's very hard for me personally to take on something that I'm not 100% behind. It's a very, very tough business. And if something feels marketable, but I don't have that, I don't know, that gut instinct that I'm I have to do this book. I'm probably not the right agent for it. And, you know, I'm not being self-deprecating. I want to make money and I want to sell things that are marketable, but, you know, there's just a lot of creative involved, and that's not something you can fake. And if I can't guide a writer, I'm not going to. So, you know, sometimes I step aside on things that I think, wow, this is a really great concept, but I'm not the right person to take it to the next level.
Might you pass it on to someone in your agency?
Yes. Yeah.
And does it make sense? I know we haven't talked about query letters yet, and we're going to, but if somebody wrote at the end of their query letter, and if this isn't for you, feel free to give it to someone in your agency, how would you respond to that
I'm
line?
fine with that. I have no
Fine with
problem.
that?
Yeah.
I mean, would you do it? You would do it anyway, though, whether the line is there or not.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And especially if I see, you know, like I'm reading something, and this happens all the time. I mean, it happened with me recently. One of my colleagues read something, wasn't for her, and she's like, you know, I think this is more you, and it was. And so we definitely do that.
Excellent. Paula?
Yeah, I mean, you have to fall, I have to fall in love with the writing, you know, and the writer, and see potential for a career there, right? A career that I can help grow. So I have to love it. I have to love the writer. I have to, you know, we can only take on so many clients, and you have to love the material. You have to love the writer. You have to think that this is a writer with legs, right? It's a project with legs and a writer who keep on writing, right? And so that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for that aha moment on the first page when I fall in love with the voice, or the, you know, and say, oh, okay. And then if you don't love it, you can't sell it. At least I can't.
I totally agree. That's something, when I was at St. Martin's, we were in an editorial meeting, and our publisher said, baby, if you don't love it, don't even bother. And I always have that in the back of my head. So basically I'm channeling Sally Richardson every day. You know, we could be working on something for months before we sell it. In fact, I sold something last year that I'd been trying to sell for 3 years. So you have to be passionate about it.
Well, you know, you all have brought up things I want to talk about. And one is, you mentioned, Paula, you know, you have to love the writer as well. And so, you know, writers are always advised to go with agents that you feel some chemistry with, that, you know, you feel like it's going to be a fit. And I'm curious, you know, from you saying that, Paula, how much of that is on the agent's part too? So you read the work, you like the work, or you love the work, and then you talk to the writer. If there isn't chemistry, what do you do with that? If you don't love the writer, but you love the work, it doesn't matter.
Yes, it does matter, because it's like, it would be like marrying a guy, you know, or having a partner who's really, you know, really handsome or sexy or whatever, but you can't talk to them, you know, so, you know, that marriage is doomed. So in many ways, it's that kind of relationship. I have to be able to talk to the person. We have to agree on, you know, the vision for this writer's career. And, you know, honestly, part of it is you have to like the person, because, you know, there's nothing more uncomfortable than a working relation with someone we don't like. I mean, or who is rude, or who, for whatever reason, you just don't hit it off. I mean, that's just, for me at least, a recipe for disaster, right? So I don't have to fall in love with this person as a human being, but I have to believe that I can work with them in a professional way, that they're going to be professional and I'm going to be professional, and together we can work professionally to further this writer's career.
How about you, Michelle?
I mean, I definitely agree with that. I've had some really talented writers that I've worked with, and I've sold their books, but our personalities were not a fit. in the long term. So we ended up parting ways amicably. So you really do want to have somebody who you feel you can have an honest conversation with, who you trust, who trusts you. You shouldn't just sign an agreement with the first agent that comes calling. You should make sure you feel safe with them.
Yep. Agents, literary.
Lori.
Totally agree with everything Paula and Michelle have said. Yeah, I mean, you're entering into a business agreement. You don't need to be, buddies with your client, but you need to be able to speak honestly with them and have clear expectations on both sides. That's something I always talk about with potential clients, because, like, I can't promise certain things. I can't promise that I'm going to get you a 6-figure deal. I mean, there are some, I can't promise that I'm going to sell your book in, a certain time frame. And you need to really get these things out there and find out what's on their mind. And, if there are conflicts, then I'm like, I'm not the right person for you.
Paula also mentioned something else, which was the first page. How far will you read? So you've received the query. The query sounds promising. You're interested in the manuscript. You ask for, I don't know, the first 50 pages, maybe the whole manuscript. How far will you read? Is it the first page?
I tell you what I'm looking for, and I think what most of us are looking for. I'm looking for that feeling you get, and I always say this, and it's because it's true. Think of that writer that you buy in hardcover, that you're willing to spend hardcover bucks for, and you wait for that new novel, and it comes, and you sit down with a glass of wine or a cup of tea, and you open that first page, and on that first page, you read 3 lines, and you're like, I'm in for a good ride. Because you just know you're in for a good ride. It's right there on the page from word 1. That's what we're looking for. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for that feeling that I'm in for a good ride. And it should come on the first page. If it doesn't, then you still have something as a writer to learn, right? And I know that the longer I'm an agent, the higher the bar is for the actual writing, and so I think that's probably true. I don't know. I won't speak for Lori or Michelle, but the longer I'm an agent, the higher the bar, because the bar is high for traditional publishing. It's high at the publisher, so it's going to be high for me too.
Yeah, I would say, it's very high. And, sometimes I feel like authors might get off to a false start with that first page or that first chapter. So, I might look ahead, and if they haven't gotten into their groove by chapter 2, then it's definitely problematic.
What about you, Michelle?
I mean, you have to remember that when we're reading, we're looking for a place to stop. So I'm hoping I don't find that place, that I get swept in and pulled in right away. I mean, if we're talking about crime fiction, I need to see a murder like within the first 10 pages. So I'm really looking for voice. I'm looking for something to like literally punch me in the face.
Okay. What about queries? How much needs to come through the query? Are you looking for voice in the query letter? Are you looking for, I don't know, logic, or that the writer, has enough there that tells you the story is complete, the novel is thought out, the writer has maybe some publications? I don't know if that matters to you or not. Tell me about your reaction to query letters when they come in and what you're looking for in the query.
I'll start if that's all right. What I'm really I love voice. I'm looking to be enticed, because the query letter is like cover letter for your resume. You're trying to grab me and hook me and make me want to read the pages. So if you have the introduction that tells me how you met me, why you're querying me, that's lovely, but it's extra. Yes, I want to know the word count. Yes, I want to know the genre, but I don't want that right at the beginning. I want to be pulled into the book. And that's what the query needs to do for me. I need to see something different than I'm not seeing in the other 99 I've read that day.
Yeah, I would say building on that, you know, I really see query letters as a business letter. It's, you know, a salesy business letter. It doesn't have to reflect the writing in your manuscript. It needs to be clear and it needs to get certain points across. Yes, it needs to entice me, and that's the sales pitch part of it. Anything, you know, yes, I want to know about, you know, awards you've gotten or workshops you've participated in. But what I really want to know is, you know, what's the log line? What is the pitch for your book? I don't want a 3-paragraph summary of your book. I want the helicopter view of your book. And yes, I want it to be complete. You know, never query me unless you've completed your manuscript. Because that's a bummer when I spend time and I write you back and then you're like, well, I should be finished with it in 6 months. But I just tell, like, I always tell writers, don't get too hung up on the, you know, it's not the same kind of writing you're doing in your manuscript. It's a different kind of writing.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately it's sales copy, right? So, I mean, at our agency, you know, we'll tell you, cut and paste the first 10 pages, bottom of the query letter, because we won't hold a bad query against you. That said, I don't necessarily look at those 10 pages unless I get the sense from the query letter that this is a good idea, that's marketable, that you have an idea that's suitable to the genre, that makes sense for the genre, but it also differentiates itself somehow, and that, you know, it will sustain a narrative of 400 pages. So if you do that, and then, you know, the whole idea is the query, it's just to get you to get the person to request the manuscript. That's its only purpose, right? So that's what it needs to do. And then it's all down to the writing.
Do you need comp titles in the
Yeah.
query?
Totally.
Yes.
I was just about to say that. I want to know that you know the market. You know, maybe you don't know everything about the market, but you should really know where your book fits in. And I think that is just so important today. And to have a few comps.
In terms of how,
I'm sorry.
sorry, no, go ahead.
I was going to say, you know, it's important to have like other titles, but I always tell people, you know, feel free to add like TV shows or movies or, you know, other sorts of story media. But you definitely need to have book titles, and they need to be somewhat recent, like within the last 3 to 5 years.
That's what I was going to ask you. How recent, how old?
Yeah.
The best comps are, you know, the editors. If an editor likes a manuscript that one of us agents sends them, they take it to publishing board, and they have to take comps with them to publishing board. And typically those comps have to be published works similar to yours, same genre, same subgenre, published in the last 3 years by an up and coming or debut author, not some category killer brand name who broke out, you know, many years ago in a totally different publishing landscape. So comps are really important. I think people don't really understand that. And nothing is a bigger red flag to me than someone who doesn't read in their genre or their subgenre. That says to me immediately that you don't know your genre, you don't know your subgenre. I you know, and that's so important. So I would really, you know, encourage you all to read widely in your genre, and not just Agatha Christie, not just Morse. Read what's, you know, read all the stories nominated for best first novel for Agatha's and Anthony's and thrillers and Edgar's. Read all those best first novels so you see what's breaking out in today's marketplace, because it's a very different landscape.
I would think, though, in terms of comps, that you would not want someone comparing themselves to or saying, I'm the next Stephen King,
No.
right? So not,
I always talk about the 3 R's of comps. They should be recent, they should be relevant, and they should be reasonable. So you don't want somebody who's a huge bestseller. You want somebody who you think is going to be at the same place in the market as you are. Maybe you're going to compare yourself to Laurie Raider Day, or you're going to compare yourself to Kelly Garrett, or you're going to compare yourself to Wanda Morris, but read those books so that you know what you're actually comparing yourself to. Because if you compare yourself to one of our clients in the comps, we're going to know if you didn't read it.
Indeed.
so some questions have come in. One is this: my suspense novel is super twisty and turny. So what is the best way to describe that kind of plot in a query letter? A more detailed summary of the setup plus suggestions of the full ride? Or would you rather I boil down the entire story to 250 words?
I like to see, a 1 or 2 sentence description, like the helicopter view of the book, nodding to the twistiness of the book. And then, a short, like 1 paragraph description, not getting into too much detail, I think is, for me, that's what's most helpful to me.
I mean, you could start with the premise, right? There's a big idea of the book, and then maybe weave in a couple of the plot points, but you don't want to go, the shorter the better. I think the shorter the better, right? I know if I can't pitch a book in 50 words or less, I can't sell it. So, make those 50 words count. And then, your comps can do the twisty turny part for you if your comps are very twisty turny kind of books.
What about you, Michelle?
Yeah, you don't want to reveal too much. You want to entice us. So, yeah, I agree with them, and definitely the 50-word thing that Paul is talking about, because editors right now are just telling us all the time, we want high concept, high concept, high concept, which means you need to be able to describe it really quickly, and it needs to be broadly appealing. Anything too niche, we're going to have a hard time with.
It kind of goes along with what you were saying, Paula, about the log line, like being able to sum it up, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, 50 words for books in Hollywood, they only want 10 words. 10-word long lines, because they don't read. So anything longer than 10 words, they're like,
I mean, Carl Vonderow can tell you how powerful a log line is. I mean, that's how he hooked me at a cocktail party.
Hey, Carl.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
and I would learn that log line in a seminar that Paula put on.
oh, interesting. Okay. What was the log line? Carl, what was the log line?
Let's see, it's been a while. A banker for the very wealthy has his life torn apart when he's accused of being a serial killer like his father.
Good.
So the punch is at the end, yeah.
Well, what about books that are wonderful? I mean, they come out all the time. They're wonderful, and it seems impossible to sum them up in a line.
Like what?
Yeah,
I don't know. I'm trying to think of something. Yeah. Well, like Where the Crawdads Sing. right? I can't imagine how that would be summed up in a line that would make it enticing to a publisher. And apparently it wasn't an easy sell. And look, it keeps going.
I suspect that, you know, they just use like Southern story comps, and she had already been a New York Times bestselling wildlife writer. And so that got her in the door, I'm sure, to at least get read. Don't you think? What do you think, Michelle, Lori?
I've never read it, so I don't know. I'm one of the people who has not read that book, so.
I admit I didn't read that far. I did start it and then I put it down and never picked it up again. I found it a little slow, but I know everybody loves it. But I do know that she's, you know, she had already a very good reputation as a nonfiction writer, right? When she did all those wildlife things with her ex-husband or whatever, they went on elephants or something. I don't know. Anyway, but I think that helped her get read, right? And because people love Southern stories.
What
I
was
mean,
the book?
that's a selling point, the whole Southern thing.
What was the book?
Where the Crawdads sing.
Oh, I like it.
So we're talking about. Here's another question. It's more directed to Michelle, but I think it broadens out to another question that I have, which is, I noticed that Michelle is not currently accepting queries. Is that correct? Or does she make exceptions for people she meets at events like this?
I don't know where they got that from because that's not the case. But yeah, I'm open to queries. Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm picky, as we all are, but
Well,
yeah.
But does it help, like when you are at an event like this and you're not, someone isn't coming to you with referral, but they've met you here, sort of, that they say that? Is that important? Will that
I mean, if
have
we've
you,
had a
will that make you pay more
conversation,
attention?
if we've had a conversation, yeah, certainly that's fine. There have been, as Carl will tell you, events where I'm at. I'll be at a cocktail reception. Somebody will tell me about their book. I'll hand them a card. I'll tell them to query me. If I do an event, you know, at New York Pitch with the lovely Paula Munier, and somebody pitches me their book, I'm going to take a look at it. But yeah, I do pitch conferences, and I'm always looking for something to grab me. But I also sign lots of people from my slush pile.
I will say that for me, it's a plus just to know that you're part of an organization like Sisters in Crime, that you come to these kind of events, that you're interested in learning more about the actual business of being a writer, and you're making friends, hopefully friends who are better published than you are, that you can ask for blurbs later. All those things are very important, and that you're part of this community. And the crime writing community in particular is very supportive and really pays it forward, and is a great, to be part of it really does help once you, it can help you get a contract, you know, meet the right people, and it can also help you once you've got a contract. So it says to me that you're serious about being a crime writer, that you belong to these crime writing organizations.
What about you, Lori?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. You know, you can't be JD Salinger today. You know, you have to like put yourself out there. And, you know, maybe you don't have to be like, you know, king or queen of social media, but you just can't like work in a tiny vacuum anymore. I mean, it's just, it's very hard for, you know, discovery is hard, promotion is hard, and you need the support of people around you.
Paula mentioned blurbs, and I'm curious if you like in query letters for a writer to say, I know so-and-so, I'm sure they would give me a blurb. Is that too much at that point? Is that something you want to talk about once you take them on? Or once you have a conversation with them before you take them on?
For me, it doesn't really matter. I mean, I really need to get hooked on it. A lot of people will say that, but it I need to get hooked on it. So yeah.
Yeah. Here's a question. How much does an agent get involved with editing a book or making it better to sell?
I think we
How
all do.
involved do you get?
We all do.
I mean, I know there's some agents who don't, but we're all former editors. So God help us, we can't help ourselves, and it's good for you because, typically, I mean, I need my editor, and I've been a professional editor for decades. So you always need a good editor, and I think as all three of us offer that editorial guidance, which is critical to success.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the more polished the book, the better chance you have of selling it well.
Yeah. And I've never had a manuscript come in that, where I've signed on the author, where I've been like, oh, great, this is wonderful, I'm sending it out. That's never happened. There's always some editorial work to do. And I've had people, I've offered representation to people and have said that, I think this is what needs to be done. And they may not agree with me, so I'm not the right agent for them. But I've, literally never sent out anything getting it straight in. That just doesn't happen. It would be nice.
How
but
important are
it doesn't
titles?
happen.
How important are titles?
I always tell authors not to be too wed to them because they're probably going to change. The titles that don't change are the exception.
That said, the title is your headline, so don't waste it. I mean, the reason most titles change is because they suck, right? So if your title is really good, as an acquisitions editor, sometimes I would have, my whole job is come up with good titles, and sometimes I would go into a meeting and I knew just from the title that this project was half approved because they just loved the title. So make it a good title, then they won't change it. But be prepared to come up with lots of titles because titles are really, really, really important.
Yeah.
Eventually.
Yeah, I totally agree. And you need that other point of view. You could be totally on board with your client with their title, but then the publisher weighs in and they have data or good reasons for wanting to open up that discussion, and you just have to be flexible.
Here's another. Do you only take on clients with whom you foresee an entire series ahead, or do you take on standalone projects?
For me, I do take on standalone projects. I mean, I think it's wonderful if somebody, and I say this because I have not worked on any series. I've taken on clients who have, ideas, but I take on people at different stages in their life too. And, I think it can be it really depends on where they are. But if I love their book, I won't not take them if they don't have other ideas, if I love the book.
Well, I think, for nonfiction, sometimes you have one great idea, nonfiction idea, and you can ride that forever, right? But I think for fiction, it's harder unless you've, written Gone with the Wind or, To Kill a Mockingbird. You only have to write one book and you're done. But most people are not one and done, right? So I do a lot of series, but I also do standalones. I mean, I want writers who write. I go to a lot of conferences and I help run the New York the New England Crime Bank. And there are some people who come there who've been pitching me the same book for 10 years. Like, write something new, you know? I want writers who write. And I think, you know, you need to write. Let your agent sell your book and you keep writing. Whether it's a standalone or series, doesn't really matter. Keep writing.
Yeah,
about you,
exactly.
Michelle?
I'm looking to sell somebody's book, but also I'm working to help them build a career. So it can be a standalone or a series, but I'm hoping that there's more than one project in them.
And so is the publisher.
Yeah.
Someone's asked, murder in the first 10 pages, is there any wiggle room on that? I've heard within the first 3 chapters. Is that wrong?
Well, I mean, the reason I say the first 10 pages is because we get so many queries that we're really looking to have somebody grab our attention in the first 10 pages. So if you're a mystery and you don't have the body in the first 10 pages, are you setting it up so that I'm going to hang on? Like, I need to be grabbed in those first 10 or 20 pages. Most people will not give you till 20. There are some agents who only want the first 5 pages. So we want to be arrested by whatever's on the page, whether it's a murder, whether it's a thriller, whether it's YA. There needs to be something happening quickly or we're going to stop reading. That's why I said that.
And I, you know, I write mysteries, and the sooner you drop a dead body, the better. I mean, basically, I mean, or like Michelle says, it's clear from chapter 1, the setup, that there's going to be a body soon, you know, something is happening. I just think it's really important. And also sometimes we get, you know, you can read a whole book and you realize that there's never a murder. It's like, what? And then people say, oh, but I wanted to write a murder mystery. I just had another person say this, another writer say this to me the other day. I don't want any violence in my, well, you're writing a murder mystery, you know, is, you know, the violence could be off the page, but you have to have one dead body, preferably 2. How are you going to get through Act 2 without another murder? I mean, you know, these are things you should know your subgenre and your genre well enough to know what the expectations are. And even if you don't, even if you twist those conventions and tweak them and make them your own, you know, somehow we breathe new life into them. They still are the conventions of the genre the reader's looking for.
Okay, what about this? What if you've been writing and publishing in another genre that's maybe done okay, but not gangbusters? Will an agent hold it against the person querying in another genre?
Well, it depends. I mean, if your sales track is really terrible, and I'm being brutally honest here, if your sales track is really terrible, but your writing is great, I might take it on, but you might have to use a pen name.
Interesting. Okay. Paula or Lori?
Well, there's that old joke, you know, change your name and write romance. There's, you know, and there's, it's actually true. I mean, you know, there's nothing wrong with, don't get me wrong, I love romance, but you know, a lot of writers write under several names, and there's a reason for that, you know, because, you know, once a book has an ISBN, it has a sales record that anybody can track, and you kind of live and die by those numbers. So I will say that, you know, if you're talking about switching genres, which does help, but I have had, you know, clients who publishers have said, well, this is great because it's a very high concept. So high concept, it's high concept enough and well executed enough that can trump a poor sales record too. But the publisher has said, okay, really high concept, really well done, but let's use a pseudonym. So.
Where do you stand on novellas?
Can't
They're
sell
tough to sell.
Can't sell. What about 3 novellas in a book? I don't know.
I mean, it's like selling a collection of short stories, very difficult to do, unless there's a very strong thread, like you know, and honestly, then what most agents would tell you to do is, oh, look, there's a strong thread connecting all these short stories, just make it a novel, you know? like remember that book, The Girl's Guide to Hunting and Fishing, came out a long time ago, but it was a collection of short stories, but it was basically sold as a novel, even though, you know, so there has to be really strong connective tissue, and it's much harder. If you can write closely connected short stories or novellas, you can write a novel, so you may as well.
What is your weakness? Voice, character, or plot?
As in, what do we love the most, or what are we
Just
worse at?
what you love the most, yeah. Voice, character, or plot?
I mean, I don't know that I could pick out one, but I mean, I'm a sucker for a voice, but I really love character-driven fiction, but it has to have a plot. The ones that are more plot-driven with no character development are not usually my favorite.
Well, voice is what grabs me right away. So, you know, I would give that precedence. It doesn't need, you know, it can't sail entirely on voice, but that's what really grabs my attention.
Voice is the one thing we can't really help you fix. We can help you fix, you know, we can say, okay, you know, the plot needs X, Y, or Z, or, you know, develop this character more, but your voice is something that's you, basically, it's you. And so a great voice is just like catnip for readers, you know, myself included, but it has to be there, right? I mean, you have to figure that out for yourself, really, mostly. I can't help you fix voice. I can show you, oh, look, here's where your voice comes out, right? Do more of that, right? But it's much harder, and that's an intense editorial process that, you know, I'm not going to sign on for, really.
Right. Well, along those lines, where you can't fix voice, but you can help with plot, say, how close does a book have to be for you to go, you know what, I can help fix this? You know, I would imagine it has to be pretty close, even though you're going to be doing a lot of editorial work together. But, you know, can you just see a glimmer of something in the material and you take on a writer because you love the voice? I mean, how close does it have to be?
It has to be closer than that. I need to see more than a glimmer. And I need to know, you know, that I have a vision for how to get it to that submission line, and that the author agrees with me. Yeah, I mean, you have to see that, like, proverbial light at the end of the tunnel. I mean, I can't go into something thinking, okay, we can do something great with this, because you can do that for years and never get something out. And it's just, it's very hard. You know, you know, agents get paid when we sell a book, and we're working on spec. So we want to get things out, you know, in a certain period of time. I mean, yes, it might take a year or, you know, so many months. But for me personally, I can't be too open-ended about it.
You know, when I first became an agent, I hadn't been an agent very long, and I was at a conference and I heard Jason Yarn, who's an agent. Somebody asked him a question like this, and he said, publishers will only take you on if you're 95% there. So I can only take you on if you're 90% there. And I thought, uh-oh, because I knew I was taking on people who were like 50% there, 70% there. And I realize now that doesn't work. It doesn't work, not just because it's a lot of work. It can also work because, number one, I don't know it yet, but the writer is not up to making those kinds of revisions. They don't know how to do it. Or two, they will resist editorial suggestions. And I can't work with anybody who's going to resist. I always tell my clients, resistance is futile, right? Because it doesn't stop with me. You get an editor, and the editor has notes. Everybody has notes, right? So for me, one of the biggest red flags in terms of working with people is what I perceive to be a resistance to editorial suggestions.
At what point would you know that, though? I mean, it sounds like you would be kind of on your way with someone and then they go, no, I'm not changing that.
Well, that's a good question. Maybe Lori and Michelle can help me there, because I'm
Yeah.
always this when I first started, it was a real problem for me, because I would do all this editorial work and then they wouldn't, they would balk. And then a lot of times then they would leave because they were annoyed that, I insisted that, and I would, or I'd go ahead and send it out because I didn't know what else to do. And then of course it would get rejected for all the very reasons I told them it would. And then they'd leave. And then a year later they come back and say, oh, could you please take me back? I'll be good this time. It's like, so it's hard because how much, we don't get paid till we sell you. How much editorial work am I going to put into it before I even know that you're up to making it? It's difficult. And I'm not sure I even know the answer after 9 years. So maybe Lori and Michelle can tell me what's the answer.
Well, I'm not sure I have the right answer, but, I definitely, have spent more time than I should have on and it's like, we're all learning. It's a creative process. We're not, putting together shoes or, it's very difficult to quantify, but if it hits certain points for me, if I can see, and again, it's just, for me, it's very intuitive. If I can see that so many things are there, if it has, a great opening, a great ending, a great concept, and it's more about character development or, paring back sometimes plot can be overly complicated. There are just things that I feel like if I can see like how we might fix these things, and it's not going to take 6 drafts, and, then I'm much more apt to want to work with that person. But if I can't I can't be so much of a gambler. Like I have to sort of like know in my bones when I'm signing somebody and be able to see it myself. There was something I read the first time I read it. It was submission. I cried at the end of it, and there were, it wasn't perfect, but it just hit like all of those points that like I love in a novel. It wasn't a crime novel. It was historical fiction, but it I saw it. I could see how great it was going to be by just how good it already was.
What about you, Michelle?
I mean, it's interesting. I've, changed my thinking about it as I have spent more time being an agent, and it's just I'm looking for that emotional connection like Laurie's talking about. I'm also looking for, they have to hit certain touchstones. If it's mystery, it has to have the basics of the plot and the characters that you're going to root for. So, I mean, if I feel like I'm going to need to do 8 drafts to get it ready to go out, then that's too much work and it's not worth it. And when I do sell it, it's probably not going to sell for the kind of deal that really fulfills me and is good for my bottom line. So yeah, I'm looking for something that is in pretty exceptional shape by the time I take it on. I mean, yes, I'm open to some changes, but if I'm really not sure if they can pull it off, I'm going to suggest an R&R rather than offer rep.
So once you do take on a client and you pitch to publishers and publishers want to see, editors want to see, will they read the full manuscript or just the opening pages?
Depends.
Do you know?
I don't think we know that.
I mean, you just don't know. I mean, I've recently found out that some editors are getting like 5 submissions or like, no, 12 submissions a day from agents. So they're slow, they're backlogged. So basically, just like us, they're looking to read as much as they can before they decide to stop. They need to love it too.
Right. And sometimes, the editor you send it to doesn't read it first. It goes to another reader, so yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
some editors I don't think read it at all, to be honest.
Yeah, I know I've done deals with editors who never read it, but their right-hand person read it, and that's how it got acquired. Doesn't matter as long as they pay.
That's it. Here's another one. What movie or series that's streaming right now do you wish was in book form? In terms of that, not a book made from TV, written from TV, but that sort of story or plot or characters that you would love to see come in.
Personally, I love the British series Line of Duty, and I think it's so timely. And I think, police procedurals have an issue right now. There's, a lot of problems with police procedurals based on current events, and I think that would be very ripe for book form in the US.
I agree. I love that one too. I'm looking at a lot of British stuff right now. I'm watching Bloodlands.
Oh, Bloodlands is good.
That's another one, and it's super twisty. I haven't finished it yet, but it's really good. There was another one with David Tennant on Acorn. One now I forget.
Oh, I stopped watching that. Got creepy. What was the name of that?
It was so creepy.
Is he the serial killer?
No, he wasn't a serial killer. It was with the woman Cush Jumbo, who was on The Good Fight.
Okay. Yeah. I don't
So
know.
that would be a good one. Basically, David Tennant and everything is just perfect.
I also love the series Unforgotten. I mean, a lot of
Yeah.
current writers, crime writers, do cold case mysteries, and I don't know. There's just something about those that really appeal to me, and I think are timeless.
Oh, Deadwater Fell. That's what it's called.
Yes, Deadwater Fell. Yes. There are some great original projects written for TV, and filmed. It's true, they are, but I tend to like the ones that were books first. Almost always my favorites, were books. And you almost always know because the character development is so good. Now, it's not always true. Like, Promising Young Woman. If you haven't seen that, it's a great movie. It's just a great, great, great movie. And that was an original screenplay. But
that's because it was written by Emerald Fennell.
I know who rocks. Yes.
Yes. I mean, she's the new showrunner for Killing Eve. She's written novels. She's an actress. She's a producer. She played Camilla in The Crown. So
she was on Call the Midwife too.
Yes.
Well, we have a few more minutes and there's a few more questions in here. And if you have a question and you really want to ask it, please get it in the chat. Let's see. Well, how can people find you, first of all? Should they go to your website? Do you like them to go this way or that? How do they find you?
They can go to the agency website, and I have a link with my bio that takes you to Query Manager.
You can go to our agency website. You can go to my paulamunier.com. You can follow me on Twitter and Facebook and all that stuff too. I would suggest that you do that. Don't pitch people, please, on Twitter and Facebook. It's not a pitching.
In.
Don't do that. but it is a smart thing to do, to follow the editors and the agents who are working in your genre, because you learn a lot.
And you can go to my agency website, fuseliterary.com. Yes, submit to me on Query Manager, not email. Thank you. Read submission guidelines. It's very important.
Yes. Well, what about Publishers Lunch or other resources? I mean, do you recommend Publishers Lunch, Manuscript Wish List? Do you think they all have something going for them, or
Sure,
one or
yeah,
the?
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, manuscript wish list, of course. That's what, editors or agents are talking about, what they're looking for. So
I mean, Publishers Lunch and Publishers Marketplace are great. They may not tell you everything we've done because, I mean, I, for one, have been sitting on a deal announcement for many months because that's how publishing is. Super secrets for many months.
Yeah, but Publishers Marketplace is great because then you can see how, when we do finally announce a deal, and it can take forever, and I'm sure mine's not up to date, you can only get one line to describe the book, no matter what the book is. So you'll see who's making the deals. And, Sisters in Crime, you do that too, right? You have your newsletter and it tells you the deals and who's making them, and all those are all great resources.
yeah, and sometimes with some of my clients, they're, working or thinking about ideas for their next books, and they don't belong to Publishers Marketplace. Can you send me some of the latest deals? And they just sort of want to see, what's going on and what people are buying. So yes, I think it's a great resource.
Michelle, I think you mentioned R&R in terms of, can you say a little bit more about that? What it is?
That's a request to revise and resubmit. So basically, I would give notes on what I think you should change about it. It works except for X, Y, and Z. But you want to see if the writer can or will make those changes. So they can choose to do that or not to. Maybe they disagree. But they can then take a stab at it and then send it back, and I would look at it again. Whereas usually if I just reject, then that's it. They can't send me the same book again.
And one more just came in. Are agents and editors currently welcoming or leery about books with important characters from multiple demographics and ethnic groups, some of which inevitably are not the same as the author? I guess we're talking about diversity, and how important is that in fiction?
I mean, I'm always open to underrepresented voices, which can be LGBTQ or BIPOC. Own voices are always welcome. I think you can write whatever you want to write, but if you're going to write outside your own background, then you need to do your research and you need to be prepared for criticism. I mean, write what you want, but be prepared to hear about it.
And one easy way to do this is of course you have a multicultural cast, because we live in a diverse world, and our stories should reflect the diversity of the culture we live in. That said, it's when you write from the point of view of a person who doesn't look like you, when you can get it, accused of cultural appropriation and other things. So that's when you have to really be careful. It's writing from the point of view of a person who doesn't look like you. So just remember that caveat.
And get beta readers.
Yes.
What about sensitivity readers?
I think they're a good idea. If you're going to use them, you need to pay them.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And a lot of publishers are using sensitivity readers now.
Really?
I had a cookbook recently that had a sensitivity read. I was surprised, but why not?
Interesting. Okay, one more. If you have a short story published in an anthology that is a precursor or has the same characters as a novel you want to query, does the short story publication knock the novel out of being traditionally published?
No.
No.
Okay. Well,
I will add though, that if you have published something on, Amazon, on CreateSpace, I don't take on those books because I have in the past, and it's almost impossible to sell them to publishers, unfortunately, to traditional publishers if they've already been for sale on Amazon, in my experience.
well, I want to thank you three, and I want to thank everybody for being here with us. This has been fascinating. Thank you so much for taking the time.
You're very welcome.
Yes, it's great
Yeah,
fun.
this is fun.
Good, thank you.